there's a depression consumer-wide,
we're still stuck in the past.
then you've got a real problem.
How often do small business owners specifically get into a situation where they're paying somebody, they think it's an even exchange, or even better, they think they're overpaying someone for that person to do their job well inside of his or her organization, and then that person compromises their own ethics in order to do something. And then they end up leaving the company, whether willfully or they're terminated. Right? Is it the system's fault? Is it the person's fault? Is it the employer's fault? How do you prevent that? I'm not necessarily interested in how you prevent it in a government or in a police department. But it's like, how many times do entrepreneurs get into a situation where you overpay to essentially keep an employee from leaving, and then they end up doing something bad anyway? Again, compromising ethics in order to hurt the employer. Because, this goes back to, right? I'm not being paid what I deserve. And what did we learn? You never get paid what you deserve. You earn what you agreed to get paid, and that's it. But it's like, for so many people, they feel betrayed by employees. The same way, a department feels betrayed by a police officer that compromises ethics to do something bad. It's weird. It's weird. Just when you think you have all the answers about, marketing and scaling and, working with your bankers and working with your vendors and your partners, we have an employee, a trusted employee, who's like, they pull out a knife out of your back and then they hand it to you and they're like, I think this is yours. Is it preventable? Do you just keep paying people Ace Roger style? Hey, this is the 27th car that I've bought employees. I buy Louis Vuitton duffel bags and electric Hummers. That's how I keep people. He's been here 5 years. Is that how you keep people?
The only thing that's preventable, the only thing that any business can do about any of this is just simply to get bigger. And there are no real solutions, because even at size, even at scale, even at billions and billions and hundreds of billions and trillions of dollars, even Microsoft and Google and Nvidia have someone that they don't want to lose. It might only be like one or two people that are like that are valued at that level. But I guarantee you these issues happen even at those levels. They're just not quite as meaningful, right? People leave Google's top secret arm and go somewhere else and take their knowledge and their know-how that's very unique to them. So
yeah, I remember.
But the chinks in the armor become less problematic as you go from 1 million to 10 million to 100 million to 1 billion to 100 billion to 1 trillion.
So is that the advice you give to entrepreneurs that are like, I'm always worried about people leaving. Should I just pay them more to stay? Is the advice just to grow beyond that person?
Yeah. I mean, I think the advice is there's not really a wrong answer. The only wrong answer is not growing after you do whatever it is that you do.
Yeah.
Right. No matter what choice you make, there's going to be some problem, right? Kind of like commission plans. You can change your commission plans every year because they all lose their luster, right? You put people on commission only, and that seems to work for 12 months. And then they get used to it and they stop performing the way you want them to. And then you go back to a base salary with less commission. And that seems to help because they have a little bit of additional security. And it's always changing. It's always moving. I think that's the moral of business is there's no answer that will last forever. The only thing that lasts forever is growth. And I think that's what large companies in the United States of America figured out. That's why it's the most valuable stock market in the world and in the history of the world. And people talk shit about it, right? They say negative things about it. They say that, this capitalism is extreme. It's creating wealth inequality, and that, the few have so much more than the 99% or the 50% or however you want to, or the middle class.
But they do.
They do. But that's what this growth only mentality, this focus, that's what it creates. And it's not a linear growth, it's exponential.
Well, it's funny because United Healthcare came to mind as you were talking about this, like growth at any cost type mentality for publicly traded companies.
Yeah.
It's a problem, right? I don't know a tremendous amount about United Health, but what I can say is, apart from Luigi Mangione, right, murdering in cold blood one of the CEOs of United Health, like not the actual CEO, but one of the unit, the heads of one of their units in New York City. Yeah. Apart from that, you've got people that you and I both know, right, who are medical doctors that each year are dependent upon insurance remittance. And the insurance remittances come from these large, just a select few, these large publicly traded healthcare providers. And each year, these large publicly traded healthcare companies are under pressure to grow, but not only grow, provide better returns for their investors. Right. So it's not just top line growth, it's bottom line as well. And they just squeeze the medical doctors. They squeeze the hospitals, and they squeeze the medical groups. And it's death by 1,000 paper cuts, because each year these guys are getting paid 5% less. And you're like, well, what does that matter? It's only 5% less. Right. But it's 5% compounded each year. And if you own a business for 25 years, it's like you're on a treadmill. You're not getting anywhere. You get two types of doctors, right? Ones who believe that they're saving humanity, and that, Hippocratic oath, and, we'll do anything to save anyone, whether they're, a mass murderer, or, it's your, or it's your mother. And then the other side are people who go into medicine to make wealth, to generate wealth. I think it's a very difficult profession, and it's hamstrung by a system that unequivocally wants the large healthcare providers to win. Specifically the United States. I can't comment, right, on other countries, but...
Well, you can't. They're not set up that way.
Right. Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
It's the opposite.
Yeah.
That's why they pay lower drug prices than we do. And Trump talked about that this week.
That's right.
He seemed angry about it. So he signed an executive order stating that the United States should be getting, the same pricing as whatever the lowest pricing that foreign nations get. Yeah. And the order had absolutely zero teeth. So the drug companies will decide if they want to follow it or not.
Right. Well, Amazing. It's an executive order, right? These presidents and their executive orders, it looks great. Like when he goes to Saudi Arabia and Qatar and UAE and goes, they've agreed to buy $600 billion of stuff. And you're like, if you're an American, a normal run-of-the-mill American, right? And you hear that on the news, you're like, oh, wow, that's great. Right. And then he comes back to America and it's like, this is lip service. They haven't committed to anything. They said they're going to buy something.
Back to Trump's Middle East trip, where amazingly the American people have received a great benefit. Jared Kushner was able to raise $3.5 billion for his private equity fund.
That's right. Yeah.
Thank the Lord.
Yeah.
This is great news for you.
Ronald Lauder was there too. Do you see Ronald Lauder?
Is that like Estee Lauder?
Yeah, he's the head of the World Jewish Congress. He's also head of like the Lauder,
No, I only saw the CEOs of the largest tech companies in the world that simply confirm what all of us need to just keep investing in.
Tech.
Yeah, there were no questions, right?
There was
Whether
no
it's
healthcare.
Huang or Elon.
There was no healthcare
Yes.
people there.
The CEO of my favorite small cap financials company or industrials company was there. No, they weren't. No one cares about them.
The CEO of Dick's Sporting Goods was there to talk about how about the Al Thani family of Qatar is helping him buy Foot Locker for $19 billion.
Thank you so much. They're like, Foot Locker, what? What is that?
Yeah. There's levels to this.
StockX recently heard that Foot Locker exists.
StockX, is that still a thing?
I think so.
I don't think so. They sell all fake Nikes.
Well, where else are you going to get them?
I don't know.
They don't have them on the website.
You know where they have them? I'll tell you where they have them. They have them on a website. If anyone's actually listening to this podcast, and I hope they are, it's www. We'll put it in the description. No, he won't. No, Lev will not. But it's www. No, he won't. dhgate.com. D as in Deborah. H as in Henry. Gate. GATE.com. dhgate.com.
Get him now.
Listen, I want to say something about tariffs because I think it's important. You have a jeweler. His name's David Levy. He seems like a good guy. Seems like a great guy. He gives me a price on a luxury item and says, I have these for you. Come get them. And so what do? I come get them for my wife's birthday. So I come to his store. He's not there. He's actually at a funeral at the time. And so this other lady at the jewelry store is helping me. And she shows me the stuff that he set aside for me. And she's like, well, he'll be back in a little while, but look at this. Isn't this beautiful? And I'm like, oh my God, it's beautiful. I brought my son there. Thank God I didn't bring my wife. I brought my son, my oldest son. He's looking at, he's like, oh, Dad, we got to buy both. I'm like, both? That's a lot of money. You know, love your wife. If you love your wife, you'll buy her both. Okay, great. All right. So we'll buy both. And I take out my wallet. And I'm like, remind me again how much this is. And she tells me the price. And I said, that doesn't sound like the price that he told me. And I look at my phone, and sure enough, there's a text from him. 3-4 days before I'd come into the store, he texts me. And sure enough, the price is like 40% lower 3 days ago. And I was like, well, listen, you know, I'm going to wait a few minutes for David to come. It's no big deal. He shows up. He's like, oh my God, look at this. It's so beautiful. So glad you came. Your wife's going to love it. And I said, hey, real quick. She told me the price was X. And I remember you told me the price was Y. He goes, tariffs. And I went, what? He goes, yeah, the tariffs are killing us. And I am no economist.
Chinese diamonds.
I am no economist. I read the Wall Street Journal. I understand 50% of the stuff I read, as you well know, right? This is stuff that's way above my head, not necessarily in my sort of wheelhouse. But I understand where the tariffs, right? Well, I understand where we're at with tariffs. I also understand when the tariffs kicked in. And I look at him and I go, yeah, tariffs. And I hand him my credit card. But he's a friend of yours.
It's not a so you have inelastic, or you have very elastic demand for these things. It's not inelastic. It's like
what was I going to do? He's your friend. I'm not going to like negotiate the price over something. But I think that's the point.
Yeah.
That many small business owners don't understand, which is that when, you know, the economy ebbs and flows, and it ebbs and flows for small companies as it does for large companies. Everybody's affected, all the way down to the consumer. As you can see with Amazon and Walmart, they're starting to display what the prices are now versus what they were before, thanks in part to the tariffs. And they're sort of putting that pressure on the consumers in hopes that $1, one vote, you'll go tell your local, you know, whatever congressperson and runs it up the flagpole, and it'll apply pressure at a federal level eventually, and they'll stop with this bullshit. But I think the fact remains is that the small business owners are so reluctant to change their pricing, right?
Yeah.
They don't want to increase. They don't want to decrease. They look to their competitors, right? And they're like, well, if they're not doing it, I'm not doing it.
Or if they are doing it, I shouldn't do it so I can win.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. And it's like the blind leading the blind. Like, now is the time to renegotiate your, what you pay your vendors, what you pay your partners. Now is the time to change your pricing. What people will pay is not a price that you think is fair. What people are willing to pay is for the value that they believe that you're delivering. Right? And I think it's all it is, right? It's all about value, right? What you can deliver. And
I just texted my pool cleaner, my pool cleaning company, and I said, you haven't raised prices in quite a few years. What are you doing? And lo and behold, comes an email a day later from Svetlana to all of the customers talking about tariffs and labor costs and all of this stuff. And she raised prices from $180 to $195. So not even 10%. And she said that she hadn't raised prices since 2022.
Yeah. Well, this is the one where her husband died.
And I thanked her for raising prices. But the consumer is a wild, squirrely thing, right? Today, consumer sentiment came out.
That's right.
Right. And I'm pretty sure we can look, but the stock market is back up and positive for the 2025.
Year? For the year? Okay.
For the year. Yeah. Yeah. Even though consumer sentiment is printed like a 50.8. To put that in context, that's as low as it has ever been. And I'm not talking about like COVID. I'm talking about back to 1950. Right. People don't feel good. And if you look at the percentage of consumers expecting more unemployment during the next year, it's at 65. The same percentage it was during the great financial crisis when no one had a job. So there's something going on with like consumer psychology and the intersection of that and politics that is unprecedented. People are depressed about the American dream, their place in society. There's a depression consumer-wide that's going on that is not explainable by our extremely high standards of living. Right? People should be feeling pretty good.
Right.
I'm sorry if you can't buy a house. But you can certainly rent a very nice one, and you can have a very nice car, and you can get DoorDash, and you can go on vacation. All wonderful things, but people don't feel good. Right. And it's possible that if you take this consumer sentiment, you break it up between people who identify as Democrats and people who identify as Republicans, you'll find out that the Democrats feel much worse than the Republicans do. Sure. But that could also be the case if you did it in 1980 or 1960. But it's just such an interesting thing that's happening. What we do know, though, is that even though consumer sentiment sucks, everybody's continuing to get to the mall on time. Parking lots are full, restaurants are full. So
I looked at that yesterday. My grandfather, as you well know, has taught me one thing. He said, if you want to know if we're headed to a recession, go to the mall, right? And if you see people walking without shopping bags, the answer is yes. And if they're carrying shopping bags, the answer is no. And yesterday I saw people with shopping bags, and listen, dude, the big retailers, right? Like, let me rephrase that. The luxury retailers seemingly are doing great. Why? Because they they cater to the middle class or the upper middle class. Obviously, I think companies like Macy's have their own problems, but I don't necessarily think that's a consumer behavior issue. I think that's a brick and mortar issue. That's a bad online sales strategy. I think they were late, right, to to work with the online retailers like Amazon and stuff like that. They really don't have a great online strategy. Nordstrom tried and failed. They kept acquiring companies. Ultimately, they had to get bailed out by, I think, private equity. But
even luxury goods companies. I mean, the biggest one, right, that we can think of is probably LVMH.
LVMH, yeah. That's
drastically underperformed the stock market, the broad stock market over the last 5 years. So, since 2023 has done very poorly.
So
but even the wealthy or upper middle class buyer is not going gangbusters for them.
I think that has a lot to do, honestly, with China.
Yeah, I mean, definitely, it's the U.S. and China, right?
Yeah, I think the Chinese market is very, remember, it used to be when the U.S. when the U.S. sneezes, right? The world catches a cold. Do you remember that phrase?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I think that I think right. We've got more parity in the world now because of globalism, and so over the last, I want to say, like 10 years, right? We talked about this on the last episode of Behind the Business, but the Chinese markets are having their own issues. I don't know if you read much about the Chinese economy, but there's just in 2025 there's been a few dozen banks that have gone belly up that have had to be acquired by the government.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Real estate over speculation, overbuilding.
Yeah. Right. The overbuilding, the ghost cities. But it's even more than the ghost city. It's developers that get easy money. Remember Keiretsu in Japan?
Mm-hmm.
It's almost the same thing with these Chinese developers and their relationships with these banks, right? They go to these banks and they have relationships with the banks and long-standing relationships, and they give them the money and they commit to building, and then they take deposits from Chinese consumers, and then the things also never get built, and then people don't get their money back. Right? And so, real estate in many ways in China is failing, right? And you're supposed to have communism mixed with property rights. It's a unique experiment. I don't necessarily understand it, but now it could be, right? When China sneezes, right, the world catches a cold, and they keep devaluing their currency to make their cheap goods that they export more affordable to everyone else. But now you've got Tim Cook, who's like, well, we'll just move the iPhone production out from China to India now. And Donald Trump's like, you can't do that, guys. Which I think, is more performative than anything. I think, he was in on this from the beginning. He wants them to move the production, obviously, to the United States. But I think obviously the first step is moving it out of China. And they showed in Switzerland, right, that 2 months of pain, right, 2 months of leverage on the Chinese economy is enough to get them to the negotiating table.
Yeah, I mean, mostly, right, he was in the Middle East. And Putin didn't show up to the Ukraine negotiations on Thursday.
Which
seemed like it was an orchestrated thing.
I think, I honestly,
like he told Trump, if you don't show up, I'm not going to show up. And Trump said, well, if you don't show up, I'm not going to show up, and I'll show up later. It was like some weird thing.
I think it was one of those things. I think it's one of those things where it's like, in order to get a ceasefire, it doesn't require Putin. He can send a low-level delegation to Turkey, and they can agree to a ceasefire. Now, if you want cessation of violence, right, and you want an actual agreement that the war is over, right? Not that there's a pause or a reprieve, kind of how they ended the Korean War, right? Because the Korean War is technically still going on, right? But that's going to take Putin showing up. And I thought we had a lot of momentum because they agreed upon, or at least the Ukrainians did, they agreed upon giving up the minerals to the United States. And they agreed on what they would pay for that, what the US would pay for that, right? And how the US paid for that. So I thought, well, you've got a mineral agreement done, and you've got some sort of reprieve, pause, cessation of violence. But then the Ukrainians go and they send they kill people in Russia, and they send drones, they blow up people's cars, and then Russia fires back, right? Levels an apartment building, kills like a dozen people. It's just tit for tat nonsense, right? It's really sad to see.
Can I ask you a question about AI?
Yeah.
Where do you think the average person is going to see it implemented first in like consumer facing applications, whether that be restaurants, grocery stores, anywhere that we like, department stores, anywhere that we physically touch, physically visit, physically interact with, gas stations?
I think it's going to pop up, honestly, with online shopping first. I think a lot of retailers are already working on this. Walmart's right now is in the news that they're working on this. They're essentially, everybody's rushing to demonstrate that they have this agentic AI, right? Meaning that like you can chat with artificial intelligence on a website, right? Inside of Amazon, right? On Target's website, whatever the case may be. And you can ask them questions about, hey, I'm looking for, I almost said the best VCR. I'm looking for, I'm looking for, the
camcorder.
best. Yeah, I was going to say the best, because it's always on my mind, the idea of security CCTVs. So I'm looking for cameras for my house. This is after you got robbed, but
is that why it's on your mind?
It's always been on my mind. I have I have 4K cameras, like domes all around my house, right? It's like
amazing.
We're running a wartime economy at the Stern household. But you can go on one of these platforms and you can ask it a question like, I'm looking for the best security cameras. What do you suggest? Yeah. And then it responds in a way that gives you both an understanding of the best of breed products, but also the best of breed products that they offer so that you don't leave. And I think this is a big threat, obviously, to Google, but Google's not dumb. They're going to figure this out too. But I think that's where you're going to see it pop up first for the consumer. It's going to be on the platforms. It's going to be agentic AI. You're not going to have to interface with customer service people. You're not going to have to do research anymore, right? About, it used to be you'd type in a Google, what's the best webcam? And then you'd have guys build these websites that were essentially affiliate websites, lead aggregation websites. It would be like best digital or best webcams of 2025.com.
Mm-hmm.
And it would just list all the webcams and have little reviews on them and like click to buy, and then they would make commission. And that's how the economy, if printers is one of the biggest, believe it or not, home printers. That's one of like the biggest scams, right, on the internet, because the game is won by affiliates who stand up these websites and basically lead you to buy the products that they want to push. And again, it's not necessarily the best product. It's the products that give them the biggest commission. So I think that's where you're going to see AI pop up first.
I would love it if I could just go to like a Nordstrom.com site.
Yeah.
Click on a shirt and have the agentic AI guide me to, hey, have you thought about a pair of pants that would look nice with this shirt? And what about shoes? And what about a belt? What about, when's the last time you bought underwear? I mean, God, that would make my life easier. I would love it.
Yeah.
And I would be buying.
You know who else would love it? Brian Armstrong. You know Brian Armstrong?
The wrestler. Or the guy that runs Coinbase. One or the other.
The latter. The latter. You're thinking of
Sounds
Stone
like a
Cold
wrestler.
Steve Austin. Yeah, Brian Armstrong. I don't know if you saw recently, but Coinbase users' information was hacked. And Brian Armstrong came out in a very like public way and said, "We have been hacked. Our customer service agents were duped. They were foreign customer service agents, right? We've learned a lesson about working with,
they're bribed
with having customer service agents overseas, and we're going to make some changes there. But I think what this has taught us is two things. One, we're not going to work with customer service agents overseas. And two, we're not going to pay a ransom. So we will not pay your $20 million ransom. In fact, we're going to put a $20 million award out for the successful prosecution of the people who stole this information." I think it's very interesting.
Tough guy.
I think it's very interesting. Tough guy, but also dovetails nicely with what you asked about agentic AI. Like, where are you going to see AI popping up? Are you going to see AI popping up, right, on these like, what do you need a customer service aid? Hello, Mr. Lyulkin. Yes, happy to help you, sir. How are you doing today?
You know who has the craziest? So you're kind of like
that was my
you're
Filipino
being facetious. But do you know who has the craziest training for these agents and who makes them say things that are just unbelievable? American Express. The scripts that these folks are using and the way they're mandated to speak to you, it's amazing. I've never heard anything like that.
It's like slavery.
Never heard anything like that. Almost. It's like talking to a personal butler.
Yeah, it's like slavery.
In a really uncomfortable way.
Yeah.
I was amazed. I did not expect to be talked that way.
Very good, sir. Yeah.
How is
lobster.
the weather outside where you are now? You're like, it's fine. Let's talk about my password. Now I need to reset it. No, but is it sunny? There are many clouds in the sky. What are you saying? Oh, I hope you're feeling good. Have you had a coffee this morning? Jeez, we're trying to build a relationship. This is incredible. And at the end, I was like, it feels kind of good. Kind of like that.
Yeah. It probably does feel good. It doesn't feel good to him, which is why this is like circling back on what we said before.
You'll be replaced by your AI girlfriend very soon.
Well, but what I mean
heard
is,
someone say that we're all going to have that the younger generation that you're.
Bro, can I make a point? Bro,
go ahead.
Can you stop talking for a moment?
Jeez.
Holy mackerel, bro.
It's amazing.
You know what you remind me of? Is Gary V Ukrainian?
Oh, yeah.
Holy moly. You're like him. We can talk about everything. But what I was saying, right, is you were talking about how, where are we going to see AI pop up first? And I think, with how people can be compromised or how your information can be compromised so easily. Well, if you have customer service agents littered across, developing countries, they're not paid well in the same way that a Ukrainian or a Mexican police officer isn't paid well. So you're like, were they duped? Were they duped into giving your information? I don't know if they're duped, Dima. If you're in India and you're making 30 cents an hour.
Wait, duped? No, they were bribed. He said they were bribed.
Right. Yeah. But that's my point, right? And that's why agentic AI makes so much sense, right? What do we need to have these customer service? It's the first type of role, right?
No.
To go the way of the buffalo. What do you need that for?
I'm looking forward to it personally.
I think so. Like my credit card information was just, well, I shouldn't say my credit card information. My kids have like these PlayStation accounts, and I saw all these charges come through. And so I get one of these text notifications from the bank, and they're like, hey, did you make all these purchases? I respond, no. And they're like, great, call us. And so I call the 800 number, and I'm waiting on hold for 10 minutes. And then I'm speaking to the person. They're asking me, do you know where your credit card is? What's your mother's, best friend's next door neighbor's birthday? I don't know all this stuff. And then they go through it for every single, dude, what are we paying these people for? AI can certainly handle that. So yeah, I think that, for retail facing businesses, right? For consumer facing businesses that are a retail side, I think you're going to see that first. I don't know what it means for Cardiff. Cardiff is an interesting bird, right? Cardiff lends a tremendous amount of money to small businesses, but we do it the old fashioned way. What does that mean? Well, we're the largest advertiser of commercial finance products on Google, on Meta, on TikTok. So people apply and they get an answer, but they can actually interface with a human, which is very expensive. And every quarter we come together, you, me, the rest of the C-suite, and we're still stuck in the past. And we talk about agentic AI, we talk about ChatGPT, Perplexity, Claude, how it's working with all these different business units within our company. But we're still hanging on to the past, which is, hey, hello, how can I help you? Is that a good idea? That's one of those things where it's like Airbnb is struggling to scale during COVID. So they send a bunch of professional photographers out to listings in Manhattan to take professional photos. So sometimes, right, the way that you achieve scale is through non-scalable means. Are we providing a better level of service vis-a-vis our peers in the industry, American Express, Square, and Stripe? Or are the days limited for Cardiff's customer service agents to be paid $150,000 a year to essentially take people's orders like an In-N-Out drive-through? We act shocked.
Yeah, it's a good question.
We act shocked. We're like, well, you can't stop, having these customer service agents at Cardiff. How are the people gonna get their money? And it's like, in my head, maybe in your head also, it's like you're in the drive-through at In-N-Out Burger, right? Do you really need to interface with the guy in the white pants? Or can you just take out your cell phone and order while you're in the drive-through in an app and then pick up your food at the window?
I think we're fortunate. I think that these questions will be answered for everything before it's answered for financial services. I think that we've got a nice 15 to 20 year window while the small business ownership ages, let's say in their 40s today until they get to their 60s, right? They're not going to be too excited to change the way they do business. Now, the folks that are younger than 40 today will be much more open to handling things differently. And by that time, I think in the next 10, 15, and 20 years, the financial transactions, the way AI handles them, it'll become much more trustworthy. Today, I don't think you can trust it with financial information or financial decision making. So it's not just, the small business loan arena is probably the least important of all the financial service arenas. You're talking about banking, you're talking about investment advice, you're talking about healthcare as well outside of financial services. I think there are so many things that you described that are so smart that will build that trust with the AI agent before we get to the financial services agentic AI and the healthcare agentic AI. I don't think that means it's not coming. I just think that we're like in the fourth inning or the sixth inning, not in the first inning.
Okay, so let me ask you this. Said differently, if you're a small business owner and you are not currently even dabbling in AI, you own a plumbing company, you're an electrician, you do decking, you build pools, you redo people's kitchen cabinets, and you're not using AI today. Is that a problem, or is there still time?
If you're a small business owner and you're not dabbling in AI, not a problem at all. Okay. The problem is if your employees and the folks you work with aren't dabbling in AI. I don't think it behooves you to be dabbling in AI. But if you don't see the people around you, especially the younger folks that work for you, dabbling in it, then you've got a real problem. I think plenty of ownership, right? Today, most small businesses are owned by people probably in their 50s, 60s, and 70s. And it's a difficult thing for them. If we just look at our parents, that's a difficult transition for them to make, to be interacting with these things. They're just not native to technology this way. But the younger people that work for them, and including their kids a lot of times, right? Boy, they better be doing it. So I think that's the responsibility.
Well, let me ask you this, because I know that you have a new company that you're building, and obviously I'm in, right? To in whatever capacity you need me. But in the financial services space, specifically, financial planning, money management, right? Those verticals. If you're a money manager, that's been your career. You start out as a stockbroker, you eventually left, you manage people's money, you got an RIA, you got a couple $100 million that you manage, you got 1% of, you get 1%, that's the fee that you make. Are your days numbered, right? Is the eventuality of money management that you could just use ChatGPT or one of these large language models and either get a similar return to what you could get working with a money manager, or maybe do even better, dare I say it, by partnering with AI. Obviously, these companies, right, they're all going to start using AI, but it's going to be dangerous in the same way that law firms kind of limit how the lawyers interact with AI. Because, AI is not perfect, and sometimes there's a word for it. Like it comes up with bullshit. I forget the technical term for it.
Yeah. Hallucinations.
Hallucinations. Yeah. You're the one who taught me that. You're like, yeah, sometimes it hallucinates, but
it does it to me.
You want to build a new business, right? And we don't have to, we don't have to delve too much into what that business is going to do, but specifically in the vertical that you're going into, how does AI influence, the next 5 to 10 years of how that industry is sort of, survive, accelerate, right? I don't know, plateau, decline.
Yeah, I think in the paid investment advice business, which is typically registered investment advisors, but also huge brokerage houses, right, that run enormous operations like Morgan Stanley or Charles Schwab. In these arenas, they cannot afford to have humans interact with smaller size accounts anymore. Right? The revenue generated by smaller accounts simply cannot overcome the costs of doing business today. And so simply by these economics, AI will become the way that these smaller accounts are serviced and how money is invested. Now, today, that's not possible, right? No one is going to trust AI to actually make these investment decisions. It can be trusted to help someone who makes investment decisions do research or write reports, but it cannot actually make these decisions because what we talked about, hallucinations.
Wait, hold on. But pause real quick. And you can even come back to this.
Yeah.
Are there a good amount of self-directed investors today that, regardless of the hallucinations, are still using these models for investment advice and to execute right on ideas?
Yeah, I would say no. I'd say we're so early. We're so early in this because what you and I know is that the average investor is not 25 years old, right? They're probably more like 45 years old or 55 years old. And they just haven't developed that level of trust and haven't spent enough time with these models to be doing that. They might be asking all kinds of questions, but to actually pick investments through this thing, I think it's a really small population. Of course, there are people doing it, but it's a really small population that's growing, that will continue to grow. And Charles Schwab and other enormous firms that all of us interact with every day are implementing AI models in their business as we speak. So if you have an account that's deemed, say, of a smaller size by that firm, it's under $1 million or something like that, your future is interacting with AI, right? You will not be allowed to speak to a human. Maybe that's in a year, maybe that's in 5. I don't know which one, but very soon you simply will not be able to speak to humans because it is not cost effective. But I don't know what level that'll be in 5 or 10 years. Maybe that'll be the $5 million level at that point. Maybe it'll be a $10 million level. But those folks will continue to demand a higher level of service, and AI will not be enough. So there will continue to be humans that interact with these folks because these folks are having different levels of needs, right? They want to know, where they can take income from next week, right? Where they can withdraw funds from next week. They need to make a major purchase. They're going to buy something, a large ticket item. They want to know how they should best do that. And as much as I think AI is fully capable of doing things like that, I think that legally and CYA, or cover your ass wise, these firms will continue to provide help because there are tax consequences involved. There are legal consequences involved. There are all sorts of high level issues that still require a human to double check what an AI model might recommend. And so I think what we're driving at is a partnership, a human AI partnership, not necessarily like a takeover. What is that called? Not a violent acquisition, but what's it called when one company acquires another company aggressively? I don't know why that's popped out of my head.
Yeah, I follow. Yeah, let me ask you another question.
Yeah.
Because financial services is one of those things where it's like, if you, it's just like legal, right? If you yield to AI, bad things could happen. But, another thing, and I want you to comment on this because I'm curious about your perspective, is healthcare. Healthcare is another industry, right? Another industry, hundreds of billions of dollars just, in the United States where, or maybe trillion-dollar industry, right? Right. Where AI, you used to have, let's say, for example, you used to have a guy who would go to work and he would wear his cute little lab coat, but you'd never see him. and he would sit in a room, a dark room, and he would look at scans all day. It's called a radiologist. And then COVID came and they realized that like, well, we don't really need the radiologist at the hospital. Radiologists can stay home. So radiologists stayed home. And then they realized that like having radiologists on staff might be too expensive. And so they're like, well, we'll just contract with companies that have radiologists 24 hours a day so that, you know, we don't need to have somebody sit on, you know, online all day long looking at scans if we're not busy. Right? We may have something pop up at 2 a.m. and we need somebody to take a look at it, and we'll work with this company. But I think, you know, as you can see, right, there's this trend towards the outsourcing of reading these scans. I think, yeah, we're probably getting pretty close to where the AI can do it better than a radiologist, if we're not already there.
I'm not sure AI is not doing it already. I'm not sure AI is not reading our EKGs and our lab tests.
Mm-hmm.
I'd be surprised if it's not to some degree.
But it still gets a human pair of eyes to like sign a name at the bottom. Like this was ultimately signed off by Dr. Zuckerberg.
Yeah, Dr. Debus. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for sure. But the AI is like the frontline defense for noticing something irregular, right? Especially like in emergency medicine, right? Where it's not just me and you walking into the doctor's office saying, hey, you know, this doesn't feel good. It's someone saying something is really wrong with me. I feel like I'm dying. They run a bunch of tests and they need immediate feedback and immediate decisions. I think AI is much better at making those decisions than any human emergency room physician. Right? It can take into account all of the blood work, all the lab work, and all of the tests that are being done to rule out certain things and figure out what's the most likely thing that's going on. And say, here's the course of action, so that a human being that's under stress, dealing with someone who's also under stress, doesn't make a mistake. I mean, I think they know, like emergency room physicians make mistakes all the time.
Yeah.
So I think that's already being tested and implemented. I mean, we're already testing robots, right? Surgery, there are robots involved in surgery where AI will be implemented. But now we're testing robots right now for things, simple things that you and I do, like dental cleanings. Like, what do you need a hygienist for? Yes, sir.
Is that right?
Right now, at some dentist's office, there's a robot. And guess what?
Wow.
They're splitting revenue 50-50.
Sorry?
Yes, sir. So the robot has been placed for free at the dentist's office. And all the robotics company is asking is that me and you split the revenue from this procedure 50-50.
Wow.
How interesting is that?
They're coming for the margins, bro.
And what's I just interacted with a physician's assistant. No disrespect to nurse practitioners, my sister-in-law, and physician's assistants. But what is the purpose of a lot of these interactions, right? It's really just a description of a bunch of symptoms, some tests, and then a doctor signs off on some course of care. So, you know, a lot of this face-to-face stuff that's going on can really be done by AI. But procedures, wow. I mean, there's huge application of AI in medical care as far as procedures go. Because the robot does not need to be directed by a human being. I don't think human beings are controlling the dental hygienist robot.
That is so interesting.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
But I think that's like one example. There's a dozen of these examples that are being tested.
But what's most interesting about it is the model, the rev share model. Because, you know, it's, you know, all surgeons that I know, right, they're interacting with AI in the operating room. They've got tools, they've got, instruments that they're using, right, that are controlled by AI, right, to see something, to feed something, to, you know, whatever the case may be. But I've never heard of a rev share model. I think that's brilliant.
I heard that and I was like, wow. That is so cool. how does my other dentist friend get one of these robots to test?
Yeah. Yeah.
That sounds amazing.
It's wild. Or I was just listening to Mark Zuckerberg on Theo Von's podcast this morning. I had no idea Mark Zuckerberg's dad was a dentist. And he was saying that like my dad was like a technologist. He was always interested in the cutting edge technology, would always buy it and implement it. And, dental care is still like, it's one of those things that I don't think it's definitely the redheaded stepchild of the medical field, right? It's not given much respect.
It's above chiropractors though.
What are those? Are those cupping agents? But it's like now they're starting to realize that there are links to cancer and stuff like that, right? That come from your mouth. And so maybe they're going to get, the respect they deserve as they sort of as they understand more about how the human body works. That's all going to come out in the wash, hopefully, with AI fairly quickly. But it's just, it's one of those things where, to be a dentist, it's such a technical, like, who goes into dentistry? Somebody who has like an engineering mind that likes to play with Legos and build things. And the truth is, right, there's no money in it. There's very little money in it. And now
depending on what you do.
But now you're yielding to, all right, you used to have a human that would do the teeth cleaning, right? A dental assistant, and they would do the teeth cleaning. 4, 3, 2, 4, 2, 1. They're like tapping your teeth with that like metal prong. You have no idea what they're talking about, right? But then you've got another human behind them with a chart of the teeth, and they're writing.
Those people are actually measuring the gum pockets or whatever. 4, 3, 2, 1.
But you get my point, right? You've got essentially a moron tapping your teeth, and you got another moron behind them writing down what the moron just said. That's not a job. That's, immediately AI will replace that. And maybe an AI will replace, an AI agent will replace a robot of some type, will replace a nurse practitioner or a PA, a radiologist. But the rev share model that you just described is the most alarming.
Robot as a service.
Robot as a service. Yeah.
Yeah. We're not selling you any robots, brother.
Mm-mm.
We're placing a robot that you lease, but the lease costs $0. We just share in your revenue.
Yeah. It's
It'll
like putting a zero. It's like putting a copy machine in a lawyer's office and go, don't worry about the copy machine. Don't even worry about the toner. Oh, don't worry about the service. We'll take care of that. We got you. It's just every case that you win, we'll take 50% of the award. You're like, free copy machine? I got to print out a lot of paper. That might be worth it. Would you take that deal as a lawyer? Maybe. I don't know.
Yeah,
maybe not at 50%, but maybe 10%. Maybe 10%.
Yeah. And lawyers or law firms have implemented LLMs already inside major law firms.
So your wife, does she work with one? It's been rolled out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. And she's actually testing it because she's curious. She wants to know, is their LLM different or better or worse than ChatGPT? Because it probably is ChatGPT, right? It's just a reskinned ChatGPT.
It's a wrapper, right? It's a wrapper.
So she logs in as me, right, into ChatGPT, and then asks it the same question. And she's like, it's interesting, sometimes it's worse and sometimes it's better. Sometimes it's the same.
Yeah. It's interesting.
But she does say that they're able to give much deeper answers from a legal perspective inside of their custom GPT than what you get with a normal, what we get when we access it. Yeah, interesting.
Costs are going up, guys. Business costs are going up, but your funding doesn't have to. Inflation and tariffs are hitting everything, supplies and payroll and rent, but your cost of capital doesn't need to skyrocket. Lock in your rate with Cardiff and get approved for up to $250,000 same day. Click the link below and get you funded. Click the link below and let's get you funded today. Cardiff, borrow better.